Thank you for joining me today. What we are witnessing in the Middle East is not just another headline, it is a historic moment that reveals the fragility of military power and the limits of political dominance. Today's news out of Israel reports that 30 of its defense bunkers have been destroyed by an aerial assault involving 42 Iranian-allied fighter jets. That figure alone should stop us in our tracks. How is it that one of the most heavily fortified nations on Earth could suffer such a coordinated strike on its defensive infrastructure? The question is not simply about military hardware, but about strategy, geopolitics, and the broader consequences for a region already stretched to its breaking point. Let me begin with this. Israel has long been portrayed as the regional fortress, high-tech, sophisticated, and shielded by alliances with the United States and Europe. Yet, what we see here is the reality that no defense system, however advanced, is impenetrable. When 42 Allied aircraft can operate in coordination and deliver such destruction, we are forced to ask, was this an intelligence failure, was it complacency, or was it a sign that deterrence simply no longer works in the way it once did? That's a hook into a deeper truth. Military dominance is not permanent, it's rented, not owned. This attack also reflects the shifting balance of power. Iran and its allies have, for years, been dismissed as incapable of matching Israel's superiority, but today perception met reality. 30 defense bunkers obliterated is not symbolic, it's structural. It means that Israel's capacity to shield its troops, store ammunition, and plan secure operations has been significantly weakened. And if 42 jets can do this today, what message does that send about tomorrow? The psychological impact may be even greater than the physical destruction, because Israel's adversaries now see proof that they can reach and dismantle what once seemed untouchable. Now, let us talk about economics, because war is always about more than bombs and planes. Every destroyed bunker represents millions of dollars lost, not just in construction, but in the logistics, weaponry, and manpower that those facilities supported. And what happens when a nation must rebuild under constant threat of renewed attacks? The costs spiral, the economy bends, and ordinary citizens pay the price. Inflation rises, taxes are redirected toward the military, and social programs are cut. The citizens of Israel, like those of Iran and its allies, are not shielded from these consequences. They live them daily. There's another hook worth noting. This isn't only about Israel and Iran. This is a global signal. When U.S. bases in the region hear that 30 fortified bunkers in Israel have been wiped out in one operation, the calculus changes. NATO allies will question whether their own defense systems are as reliable as they have been told. Global investors will hesitate, markets will wobble, and oil prices will fluctuate as uncertainty spreads. In short, one regional strike echoes across the global system. So what do we take away from this moment? We take away the sobering reality that the age of military certainty is over. In its place stands a multipolar, unpredictable, and destabilized reality where yesterday's dominant power can be humbled overnight. Israel has just experienced this in a way that will shape its military doctrine, its politics, and its diplomacy for years to come. But the deeper truth, the one too often hidden behind headlines, is that ordinary working people, from Tel Aviv to Tehran, will bear the heaviest costs of these escalations. They are the ones who lose jobs, pay higher prices, bury their children, and inherit the instability that elites manufacture. And so I close with this: we should not view today's destruction of 30 Israeli defense bunkers merely as a military statistic. It is a symbol of the fragility of power, the danger of hubris, and the urgent need for diplomacy over destruction. Because as long as nations invest more in weapons than in cooperation, we will keep repeating this cycle, each strike met with retaliation, each loss followed by another escalation. And history, if it teaches us anything, warns us that such cycles rarely end well. Thank you. When we talk about major Israeli setbacks, the destruction of 30 defense bunkers in one coordinated strike cannot be overstated. These are not just concrete shelters buried beneath the earth. They represent decades of planning, billions of dollars in military investment, and the psychological assurance that in times of crisis, Israel's forces had somewhere safe, secure, and untouchable to retreat to. That illusion has now been shattered, and with it, a sense of invulnerability that Israel has worked hard to project both to its citizens and to the wider world. This is the kind of event that forces a nation to stop, take a breath, and ask questions it may not be prepared to answer. How could this happen? What does it mean for tomorrow? And, perhaps most unsettling, if these bunkers were not safe, then what is? For Israel, bunkers have long been a backbone of defensive planning. They store ammunition, shield command centers, protect troops, and ensure continuity of operations when the skies rain down rockets or bombs. To lose one is damaging. To lose 30 in a single wave of attacks is staggering. It's not only a matter of material destruction, but of perception. Israel's enemies are watching closely, calculating what else may now be within their reach. If 30 bunkers can be eliminated, what about critical radar stations, missile batteries, or even symbolic landmarks? That's the hook. The world just saw the curtain pulled back on Israel's vulnerabilities, and it changes the strategic calculus overnight. Consider also the psychological blow. For ordinary Israeli citizens, the bunkers symbolize a last line of defense, a place where soldiers regroup and leaders strategize. The news that 30 such bunkers were destroyed at once sends a chilling message. Even the safest places are no longer safe. This does more than damage infrastructure, it shakes confidence. And when confidence cracks, everything else begins to unravel. Investors hesitate, allies worry, adversaries grow bolder. The battlefield is no longer just about bombs and missiles. It is about belief. Belief in one's own strength and belief in the opponent's weakness. Right now, Israel's opponents see strength where Israel hoped they saw only futility. There is also a question of preparedness. Israel has one of the most advanced intelligence networks in the world, backed by constant surveillance and U.S. support. How, then, could 42 Allied jets manage to carry out such an attack without being intercepted or neutralized? This failure points to gaps, whether in intelligence, coordination, or complacency. And those gaps are not just technical, they are political. If leaders oversold the strength of Israel's defenses to its people, then today they face a double crisis, one of security and one of trust. History tells us that when populations begin doubting their leaders' ability to protect them, political consequences follow swiftly. Economically, the loss is immense. Bunkers are not cheap holes in the ground, they are reinforced, high-tech facilities designed to withstand some of the deadliest modern weapons. Each represents tens, if not hundreds, of millions in sunk costs. Their destruction in minutes turns those investments into rubble, and the cost of replacement will be even higher under current conditions of instability. This is where economics collides with warfare. Resources poured into rebuilding bunkers mean fewer resources for social services, healthcare, or education. A population already fatigued by conflict will feel this squeeze in their daily lives, turning frustration into anger. The symbolic dimension is equally powerful. Israel has cultivated an image of near invincibility, its Iron Dome, a phrase that captured the imagination of the world. But today's headlines tell a different story. The dome has cracks, the fortress has weak points, and its enemies have proven capable of exploiting them. For Iran and its allies, this is more than a military win. It is a propaganda victory, a tool for rallying their supporters and recruiting new ones. They can point to 30 destroyed bunkers as evidence that resistance works, that even the most powerful regional military can bleed. This moment, then, is a turning point. It challenges not only Israel's military strategy, but also its political narrative, its regional standing, and its sense of security. It hooks the attention of the global community because it forces everyone to reconsider long-held assumptions. If Israel is vulnerable, then the balance of power in the Middle East is shifting faster than many predicted. And in geopolitics, perception often shapes reality. A setback of this magnitude may embolden adversaries, pressure allies, and redefine the course of the conflict. The coordinated assault carried out by 42 Iranian-allied fighter jets against Israel is more than just a military operation. It is a statement, a carefully crafted demonstration of power that reshapes the regional conversation. To understand the magnitude, we must consider what it takes to mobilize such a strike. 42 jets do not simply appear in the skies by chance. They require planning, logistics, intelligence coordination, and above all, the ability to operate under a unified command. That level of coordination reveals something deeper. Iran and its allied groups are not the disorganized militias of decades past. They have matured, adapted, and now possess the capability to orchestrate a strike on par with conventional militaries. This is the kind of operation that captures global attention and forces analysts to admit that the balance of power is shifting. When you hear the number 42, it immediately grabs your attention. This isn't a handful of rogue aircraft slipping past radar screens. This is a fleet-sized operation, the kind of scale we typically associate with NATO or US-led missions, not regional alliances. That scale alone is a hook. It says we can muster resources, we can synchronize timing, and we can strike at the heart of a heavily defended adversary. The fact that this was executed successfully against one of the most advanced defense networks in the Middle East raises pressing questions about the future of air dominance. If Israel, with its cutting-edge technology, could not deter or neutralize such a strike, what message does that send to smaller nations that depend on Israeli or Western defense systems for their own security? This assault also marks a turning point in psychological warfare. Israel's military has long rested on the idea that its air force and air defenses dominate the skies. For its enemies to dispatch 42 jets in a coordinated maneuver signals not just capability but confidence. It says, "We are no longer afraid of your response, we are prepared to meet it." That shift in posture is as destabilizing as the physical damage caused. It emboldens those who have, until now, been cautious, and it unsettles allies who believed Israel was a step ahead in every possible scenario. The skies no longer look the same after such an operation. Let us consider the operational brilliance involved. Coordinating dozens of jets requires timing down to the second. They must evade detection, misdirect enemy radar, and strike simultaneously to overwhelm defenses. That this could be achieved indicates that Iran's network of allies has grown remarkably sophisticated. They are not simply borrowing weapons, they are sharing intelligence, developing joint tactics, and learning from past confrontations. This is a form of coalition warfare, the kind that turns scattered movements into formidable regional forces. And if they can pull off one strike of this magnitude, the world is left wondering how many more they can replicate and how quickly. There's also the economic dimension buried in this story. Every time an adversary can launch a strike of this scale, Israel is forced to respond with equal or greater cost. Scrambling jets, activating defense systems, and preparing counterattacks all burn through resources. For Iran and its allies, the expense of mounting this one strike was significant, but the return on investment is enormous. They inflicted massive physical damage, showcased their capabilities, and altered the global perception of the conflict. Israel, on the other hand, must now spend exponentially more on rebuilding, on defense upgrades, and on restoring the credibility that has been cracked. This asymmetry in costs is a silent but powerful advantage for Iran's side. And then there's the symbolic aspect. 42 jets flying in coordination tell a story that no propaganda video or speech could achieve. They show in real time that unity among Iran's allies is more than talk. It is action. For supporters of the Iranian cause across the region, this is proof of strength. For opponents, it is a warning. And for the global community, it is a reminder that alliances once dismissed as proxies are evolving into structured military partnerships capable of challenging the most fortified states. What makes this strike even more significant is the ripple effect. Military planners in Washington, London, Riyadh, and Ankara are all watching. They are recalculating scenarios, adjusting strategies, and quietly acknowledging that the skies are no longer dominated by one side. The hook here is clear. If 42 jets can break through once, the threat is no longer theoretical, it is a proven reality, and in international politics, proven realities carry a weight that speculation never could. When we turn to the issue of intelligence and security failure, we are confronting perhaps the most troubling dimension of this entire episode. Israel has built much of its reputation, not only in the Middle East but globally, on the strength of its intelligence services. Mossad, Shin Bet, and military intelligence units are regarded among the best in the world, known for anticipating threats before they materialize and disrupting plots long before they can reach execution. Yet the fact that 42 Iranian-allied fighter jets could organize, mobilize, and strike 30 bunkers inside Israel without being neutralized exposes a glaring contradiction. Either the intelligence apparatus was blindsided, or the information was present but mishandled. Both possibilities carry devastating implications for Israel's security credibility. Consider the scale of what happened. Fighter jets are not like smuggled rockets hidden in trucks or makeshift drones assembled in garages. They are large, technologically advanced machines that require airstrips, fueling, maintenance, and coordination. The movement of so many aircraft is not invisible. It should have triggered alerts in satellite monitoring, radar sweeps, or at the very least, human intelligence networks. That it did not, or that the alerts were insufficient to stop the strike, suggests a systemic lapse. Here lies the hook. If Israel's famed intelligence services can miss something of this magnitude, then what else might be slipping through unnoticed? It is worth remembering that Israel's strength has often rested on deterrence through information. The belief that Israel already knows has been a psychological weapon in itself, discouraging adversaries from attempting large-scale operations. Now, that aura of omniscience has been punctured. If enemies feel that Israel can be surprised, they will test those limits again and again. And if citizens feel that their intelligence agencies are fallible, public confidence in state security erodes. That erosion is not just emotional. It influences politics, elections, and foreign relations. Allies may quietly begin to hedge their bets, questioning whether Israel can serve as the stable bulwark they rely upon in a volatile region. Let us look at the possible causes. One explanation may be complacency, overconfidence in defense systems such as the Iron Dome David Sling, or advanced radar technologies might have created a blind spot, the assumption that nothing significant could penetrate. Another explanation could be tactical misdirection by Iran and its allies, perhaps decoys, false signals, or cyber interference designed to confuse and overload Israeli monitoring systems. A third possibility is simple intelligence overload. When agencies are monitoring thousands of signals at once, real threats can sometimes get lost in the noise. But whatever the reason, the bottom line remains, a system designed to be airtight has shown cracks large enough for 42 jets to slip through. The failure is not only military but political. Leaders often stand before their people and promise absolute protection, reassuring citizens that we are prepared for every scenario. Those words ring hollow when the evidence shows otherwise. The loss of bunkers is a material wound, but the loss of faith in leadership is a deeper scar. Politicians will now face the question, did they ignore warnings? Did they mislead the public? Were resources stretched too thin or misallocated? These questions will reverberate in parliament, in the press, and at the kitchen tables of Israeli families. They are the kind of questions that shift public opinion and shape the trajectory of governments. Economically, too, intelligence failures have a price. Markets react not only to physical destruction, but to the perception of vulnerability. Investors who believed Israel's security environment was under control may now factor in higher risk. This can affect everything from foreign investment to the cost of borrowing, placing new burdens on an economy already strained by conflict. And as history repeatedly shows, once doubts about security enter financial markets, they are difficult to erase quickly. The symbolism of this lapse is also striking. Israel has long exported its intelligence expertise, training other nations' services and selling advanced surveillance systems worldwide. Those partners are now asking if the exporter of security solutions cannot secure itself. What does that mean for the reliability of the tools they've purchased? This introduces another hook: global ripple effects. An intelligence failure in Israel undermines not just domestic security, but the credibility of an entire industry built on the promise of foresight and prevention. At its core, this episode underscores a harsh truth: no intelligence service is infallible. But the timing, scale, and consequences of this failure make it particularly damaging. It reveals vulnerabilities that adversaries will exploit, destabilizes the trust of citizens and allies, and shakes the economic and political structures built on the assumption of strength. And the haunting question remains, if this could happen once, what guarantee is there that it won't happen again? The strike that destroyed 30 Israeli defense bunkers and the coordinated use of 42 Iranian-allied fighter jets is not just a tactical victory, it is a dramatic shift in the balance of power across the Middle East. For decades, Israel has been considered the unrivaled military force in the region, bolstered by U.S. support, unmatched air superiority, and a reputation for near-total invulnerability. Yet this event punctures that narrative. It demonstrates that Iran and its allies are no longer constrained to playing defense or engaging in low-level skirmishes. They are capable of mounting large-scale, coordinated, and devastating operations that redefine the rules of engagement. The hook here is undeniable. The image of Israel as an untouchable fortress has cracked, and once an image cracks, it is almost impossible to restore. Regional dynamics are built on perception as much as on raw power. For years, smaller states and movements aligned with Iran were hesitant, calculating that any direct confrontation with Israel would be met with overwhelming retaliation. That caution has now been replaced by confidence. The strike has shown that Israel can be hurt, and not just symbolically but structurally. 30 bunkers represent not propaganda targets but core elements of Israel's defense strategy. When such assets are taken out in one coordinated move, adversaries everywhere take note. The psychological map of the region shifts. Where once Israel loomed as an intimidating giant, now it appears vulnerable, and that vulnerability changes the calculus for every player involved. This shift is not limited to enemies. Allies are watching just as closely, and they are recalibrating their strategies. Nations like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt, which have complex but cooperative ties with Israel, will quietly ask themselves whether Israel can still guarantee stability in moments of crisis. For the United States and NATO allies, who have long relied on Israel as a bulwark in the Middle East, the same question arises. If Israel's defenses can be breached so decisively, then the security assumptions underpinning regional alliances require urgent rethinking. And once allies begin to doubt, trust erodes, creating openings for adversaries to expand influence. Iran, meanwhile, emerges from this moment emboldened. For years, its leadership has promised to resist Western and Israeli dominance, often dismissed as rhetoric. But rhetoric backed by action becomes power, and power demonstrated on this scale reshapes regional order. The attack is not only a victory for Iran itself, but for its network of allies across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and beyond. They now see proof that their collective strength can rival that of Israel's once undisputed supremacy. It transforms a series of fragmented resistance groups into a credible coalition force capable of altering strategic realities. The implications stretch even further. Consider the position of Turkey, a NATO member with regional ambitions of its own. A weakened perception of Israel opens new opportunities for Ankara to position itself as a central player in security arrangements. Russia, deeply invested in Syria and closely tied to Iran, also benefits from this rebalancing of power, as it shows that Western-backed military superiority can be challenged. And China, quietly building influence through economic corridors, observes this weakening of U.S.-Israeli dominance as fertile ground for advancing its own strategic partnerships. The hook here is striking. A single coordinated assault against Israel ripples outward, shifting not just regional alliances but global geopolitics. What makes this shift particularly profound is the symbolic dimension. Israel's long-standing deterrent strategy relied on fear. The fear that any attack would be met with overwhelming response, that Israeli defenses were too sophisticated to penetrate. That fear was part of what kept adversaries from daring large-scale operations. But fear works only as long as it is untested. Once tested and proven flawed, it loses its grip. The moment those 42 jets struck successfully, a barrier was broken. From that point on, the fear dynamic tilts. Adversaries now feel bolder, while Israel must confront the chilling reality that deterrence is no longer guaranteed. Economically, this shift is equally significant. A perception of vulnerability raises risks for investors, discourages long-term commitments, and forces governments to pour more into defense at the expense of domestic priorities. The cost of re-establishing deterrence will be immense, and in the meantime, adversaries gain momentum not only militarily but politically. Iran and its allies can point to this strike as proof of effectiveness, rallying new support and recruiting those who once doubted the feasibility of standing against Israel. Symbol becomes substance and perception transforms into real power. In essence, the destruction of 30 bunkers by 42 Allied jets does not exist in isolation. It is the kind of event that resets the chessboard. Every player, ally, adversary, or neutral observer, must reassess their next moves. The hook is sharp and unavoidable. The balance of power in the Middle East has shifted before our eyes, and the consequences of that shift will echo far beyond the battlefield where the strike occurred. The destruction of 30 defense bunkers inside Israel is not only a military loss, it is also an economic and social catastrophe that carries consequences far beyond the battlefield. Each bunker is not a simple concrete structure, but a highly fortified installation equipped with advanced technology designed to store weapons, shield personnel, and serve as command centers in times of conflict. The financial investment behind every single one of these bunkers runs into tens of millions of dollars. Multiply that by 30, and the sheer scale of economic loss becomes staggering. What was destroyed in a matter of minutes represents years of taxpayer funding, years of construction, and billions in national resources. The hook here is unavoidable. Every bomb that fell on those bunkers did not just crush stone and steel, it also crushed the illusion that money alone can buy lasting security. Economically, the cost of rebuilding will be enormous. Israel will now be forced to divert resources from other critical sectors into rapid reconstruction of its defensive infrastructure. This means fewer funds for healthcare, education, housing, and other public needs. When governments are pressured to spend disproportionately on defense, the ordinary citizen pays the price. Taxes rise, social programs shrink, and the quality of daily life erodes. In many ways, the 30 destroyed bunkers are not just Israel's loss, they become the burden of every household, every worker, and every family who will feel the ripple effects in their wallets and their public services. But the fallout does not stop at economics alone. There is also the matter of civilian psychology. For decades, Israel has presented itself as a nation capable of shielding its people from the worst of regional instability. Bunkers symbolize that promise, a guarantee that in times of danger, there were safe spaces and protective measures in place. The news that 30 such bunkers could be eliminated so swiftly shakes that confidence to its core. Citizens who once believed in the invulnerability of their defenses now face a terrifying realization: if the military's fortified shelters can be destroyed, what hope is there for ordinary neighborhoods, schools, or hospitals? The hook here is piercing. Fear migrates from the battlefield into the living rooms of civilians, where uncertainty becomes as damaging as any missile strike. This shift in civilian sentiment also carries political weight. Citizens begin questioning their leaders, asking whether they were misled about the strength of defenses or whether intelligence failures were ignored. Such questions destabilize governments, fuel opposition parties, and create divisions in societies already under the strain of conflict. In Israel's case, where politics is fiercely contested and coalition governments are fragile, the anger and disillusionment of citizens can translate into upheaval at the highest levels of power. The destruction of bunkers may well echo into election results and policy debates for years to come. On the global stage, investors and markets are quick to react to such shocks. Israel is seen as a hub of technology and innovation, a place where international companies feel confident investing despite regional instability. Yet, when 30 bunkers can be destroyed overnight, it undermines the narrative of security and resilience that has been central to Israel's economic brand. Global markets react not just to losses but to risks, and the perception of vulnerability inflates those risks dramatically. Currency values, stock markets, and foreign investment flows all tremble under the shadow of military setbacks. In this sense, the bombs that destroyed those bunkers also sent shockwaves through global financial systems. There is another dimension that deserves attention: the morale boost for Israel's adversaries. While Israel grapples with the economic burden and civilian anxiety, Iran and its allies will point to this strike as evidence of their strength. For them, the propaganda victory is immense. They can claim that Israel is no longer untouchable, that its defenses are not invincible, and that resistance can achieve tangible results. This narrative resonates not only with militants and fighters, but also with broader populations across the region who have long viewed Israel as an immovable force. The hook here is sharp. One side's destruction becomes the other side's rallying cry, and that rallying cry fuels cycles of escalation that carry their own costs in human lives and resources. The ultimate tragedy, however, is that ordinary people, civilians with no role in military planning, will bear the heaviest weight of these developments. Every bunker destroyed is a financial loss for the state, but every consequence of that loss trickles down to citizens who face higher costs of living, greater insecurity, and diminished public trust. This is the cruel irony of modern warfare. Leaders and generals make the decisions, but workers, families, and children live with the aftermath. The destruction of 30 Israeli defense bunkers by 42 Iranian-allied fighter jets is more than just another headline in an already tense Middle East. It is a warning siren echoing across the global security landscape. When such an assault takes place, it does not merely signify the loss of military infrastructure, it reflects a tectonic shift in power dynamics, raising urgent questions about deterrence, defense, and the long-term balance of geopolitical strategies. The international community must not dismiss this as a localized skirmish. It is a manifestation of a broader, dangerous realignment of forces. What makes this moment so critical is that it underscores how rapidly the rules of engagement in modern conflict are evolving, and with them, the stability of an entire region long marked by volatility. We must ask ourselves, what does it mean when Israeli bunkers, symbols of resilience, protection, and defensive preparedness, are reduced to rubble in a matter of hours? It means that the assumption of safety, once grounded in hardened fortifications, can no longer be taken for granted. It forces us to recognize that defense infrastructure is not invulnerable, that even the most fortified strongholds can be penetrated when adversaries employ advanced coordination, intelligence, and technological precision. This is not just an attack on concrete walls or underground structures, it is an assault on the perception of invincibility itself, and that makes it profoundly destabilizing. Equally striking is the timing. The Middle East is a region where symbolism often matters as much as material outcomes. To strike Israeli defense bunkers is to send a message, not just to Israel but to every ally and rival alike, that deterrence can be challenged, that long-standing assumptions about military superiority are open to question. Iran and its allies are communicating that they are not merely capable of responding, but of initiating bold, coordinated strikes. This is an escalation that reverberates far beyond the immediate battlefield, one that alters calculations in Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and European capitals. Suddenly, strategies that seemed reliable yesterday appear shaky, and leaders are forced to reconsider what the next phase of conflict might look like. One cannot ignore the psychological dimension of such events. War is never fought only with weapons, it is fought with perception, fear, and morale. The destruction of these bunkers undermines Israel's aura of impregnability. It stirs unease among civilians and questions among military planners. At the same time, it emboldens those aligned with Iran, who now see tangible proof that coordinated action yields dramatic results. In a region where alliances shift quickly and narratives drive recruitment and resolve, this attack is as much about shaping stories as it is about achieving tactical gains. Who controls the narrative controls the battlefield of ideas, and in this case, Iran's allies have seized a dramatic piece of the story. But the implications stretch even further. We are witnessing the erosion of traditional lines between defense and offense, between domestic security and international conflict. When bunkers fall, they are not just military structures collapsing, they are symbols of a broader vulnerability. For nations around the world, this event should be treated as a signal flare. If Israeli bunkers are not safe, whose are? If Israel's renowned intelligence and defensive systems could not preempt or prevent such an attack, what does that say about the preparedness of other nations relying on similar strategies? These are unsettling questions, but they cannot be avoided. The most sobering reality here is that this event highlights the acceleration of modern warfare. The tools, technologies, and tactics available to states and their allies are far more advanced, interconnected, and unpredictable than before. Fighter jets operating in unison with precise intelligence have demonstrated that even layered defenses can be rendered ineffective. This raises the specter of future confrontations where infrastructure, cities, and even global supply chains could be targeted with equal boldness. What was once confined to speculative scenarios is now playing out in real time with profound implications for all nations. So the world must not look away. This is not simply Israel's problem nor Iran's gambit. It is a signal of what is possible in an era where power is contested not just by major states but by networks of allied forces capable of coordinated, high-impact strikes. The international order, already fragile, faces a new test whether it can adapt to this reality before the next strike shifts the balance even further. The destruction of these bunkers is more than a military episode. It is a turning point, a glimpse into the conflicts of tomorrow. And the question remains, are we prepared, or are we merely waiting for the next shock to remind us of how unsteady the ground beneath us truly is?